Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us for how AI is revolutionizing business. Just with a few comments that we had over the past few minutes before we went live, I'm really excited about this discussion and why this came about and why we thought we wanted to get together. A lot of the recent, more public or notable innovations within artificial intelligence. But before that, I should probably introduce myself. My name is Jason Byrne. I am the founder and CEO of Icon IQ. We are a tech recruiting company that recruits the best tech talent from across Latin America for Canadian tech companies, including data science. But let's go back to some of the recent advances in artificial intelligence. So a lot of people are now familiar with OpenAI's ChatGPT. That is one of several large language models that are either now available or will be available. Google's Bard, Amazon's Bedrock, Facebook's Llama. And who knows from what other emerging tech companies these will appear as well. It was just shared with me that Europe is seriously looking at banning, controlling, restricting these large language models for public consumption. But I thought that we might just, before we get into it, reflect on some of what AI's history is and what it really has meant. And again, this is going to be surface level, and it was mentioned that so Mike shared an interesting statistic that Bayes' theorem was developed by monks in the 1700s, and that was an early iteration of AI. Some of the more recent ones would be Alan Turing and his Enigma code-breaking machine during the Second World War, the Turing test that he developed in 1950 to test a machine's ability to exhibit intelligent behavior or mimic humans. In 1964, Eliza was the first chatbot developed by Joseph Weizenbaum at MIT. Although Eliza couldn't speak, communicated through text. If we jump ahead a few decades, IBM's Deep Blue in 1997 defeated world chess champion Grandmaster Garry Kasparov. In 2005, and I was mentioning to our guests, I'm a big car guy, so I was following this back in the 2000s, but DARPA would host a 100-kilometer autonomous vehicle race through the Mojave Desert. So a lot of what we see now in autonomous vehicles, the LiDAR, the sensors, the cameras, a lot of that technology was, it was originally developed during the DARPA autonomous vehicle race. A lot of people will probably now remember IBM's Watson in 2011 defeated Jeopardy champions Ken Jennings and Brad Rutter. More recently, Siri, Alexa, and Tesla's Autopilot are AI innovations or products that many of us are familiar with. So we'll get into all of that and more. I'd first like to introduce our very special guests. Mike Allan is the CEO of Routeique, a Calgary-based technology company focused on the logistics and supply chain space. Mike has more than 30 years of experience as a serial technology entrepreneur, founding several startups focused on digital transformation, e-commerce, and applications development. He holds a bachelor's degree as well as an MBA in supply chain and blends a long history in software development with sales, marketing, and business experience. Routeique gives fast-moving consumer goods businesses unprecedented supply chain insight, foresight, and oversight. In partnership with them, they use this transparency to make enterprises more efficient, competitive, sustainable, responsive and profitable than ever before. I would like to introduce Adam Danyleyko. Adam is the product owner startups at Amii. Adam is passionate about supporting, engaging, and growing the startup community in Alberta and beyond. He is driven by seeing others grow and learn. Adam came to Amii from Startup Edmonton, and that's where Adam and I originally met several years ago. where he grew the post-secondary programming that led to the community team. Adam also has over 4 years of experience with the government of Alberta, where he worked in many different roles, including HR business partner in Alberta Energy, and is a policy analyst in economic development and trade and corporate human resources. Welcome, Adam. And last but not least, we have Dave Staszak. Dave is a lead machine learning scientist with the Amii Advanced Technology team, providing oversight on applied ML projects across a range of industries and applications. Prior to Amii, Dave led the machine learning modeling and advanced analytics efforts at Adamo, a health AI company. He is a published researcher in multiple fields, including particle physics, astrophysics, and medicine. Dave earned a PhD from UCLA in particle physics and a postdoctoral fellow in astrophysics at McGill University and the University of Chicago. Thank you all for joining us. Those are huge intros, and I'm really excited to get into this. I thought that, you know, I provided a little bit of a preamble on AI. But I thought that Dave might be able to open us up with a bit of a more technical explanation or background on, you know, what is AI, and really, you know, how do you distinguish it from related fields or domains like machine learning?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for the intro, and really happy to be chatting with everyone here. I think, you know, thinking of, you know, whether you go back to Bayes in the monk that he was, or Google, or whatever it is, like machine learning and AI is just at its core just kind of a statistical inference that learns from existing data, some function to be applied to new data. So like, you know, you can make it as technical as you want, but, you know, overarching, that's all it is. I think, you know, I would basically break it into, you know, maybe 4 main classes or branches of machine learning and AI. But, you know, a lot of these things that get the hype is maybe not where, you know, historically and from a business perspective, you know, the majority of the value is. You know, the majority of the value for small to medium businesses from a historical perspective has come from supervised learning, you know, where you basically are just giving a model examples to learn from. An example of that may be housing. You know, feed a model an algorithm housing and neighborhood characteristics to predict the housing prices, or, you know, ultrasound and MRI images to diagnose cancer, something like this. I think that's kind of, it seems like that's been the wheelhouse that's been working in the background to make a lot of this, you know, make a lot of these innovations happen and actually deliver value. There's, of course, unsupervised learning methods that are out there as well. Maybe you don't have an exact examples to learn from, but you could, you know, you could imagine, you know, detecting fraud, where you could, you know, give it a whole bunch of examples to learn what fraud looks like, but maybe you don't know what fraud looks like. So you got to be a little bit smart, you know, so these kinds of anomaly detection methods. You know, maybe a third branch would be reinforcement learning, which is something that we do a lot of, which is kind of an exciting field where you basically have, you know, some kind of active agent to iteratively make decisions. These are where you kind of, you know, we're talking about these famous games where someone's beat the best Go player, beat someone in chess, Atari, something like this. You know, you basically create this computer agent. You're feeding it this current state of the game. You give it some agency to make some decisions, like move this, take this piece, different things like this, and a reward structure. And then, you know, maybe negative points for losing a piece, positive points for taking a piece, big rewards for winning. So I think that's a whole nother branch that's actually coming and starting to make a lot of progress in the real world outside of academia. And, you know, for example, in warehouse management and different stuff like this, you're really starting to see some applications of this. But then there's, of course, the elephant in the room, which is maybe the hottest commodity right now, like you mentioned, is maybe generative AI, where you're seeing these chat GPT things where you don't necessarily need to give an example to like actually, you know, create a prompt, feed it a prompt and it returns content, if you will. You know, these are models that are basically just trained on the, you know, the English written content on the web and so forth like this. So I think, you know, of those 4 branches, maybe generative AI is getting a lot of attention now, but hopefully it'll help us pull everything up in some extent. So that's how I would characterize the lay of the land, at least in terms of what's delivering value and what's out there.
And I think that you know, we're hearing a lot about AI lately, and I'm just curious: Has it always been an iceberg in that there's, we are as the public conscious of a small piece of the work being done in AI, and there's been an immense amount of research and applications of AI beneath the surface. Are we seeing, is that all it is, or is, I guess, why are we seeing so much more AI now in our daily life? Is it just a familiarity, or are we going to see as consumers AI being more relevant to what we do day to day?
Sure, I can even jump in first here, Jason. So I think that, AI has been something that's been around, like you mentioned, since Alan Turing in the 50s as a formal study of computer science. And so it's been around. It's not like it's just coming out in the last couple of years. And I think that AI is something that we see in our daily lives all the time, and we might not even realize that we're interacting with AI. So there's, quick examples, your spam filter on your email, it's using AI to predict if this is a real email or spam, or if it should go in your promotions or whatnot. Your Amazon recommended thing. So you're looking at this, what's another thing that other customers who bought this also bought or would like? It's using these different AI models to help you and make your life easier. Obviously we know that it's taking place on social media too, to provide, right, like what they think is going to be the next piece of content that you're going to engage with the most, whether that's on YouTube or Instagram or TikTok. So we're already using and interacting with AI almost constantly, even if you're not realizing it. I think that some of the ways in which some of these more generative AI models like ChatGPT or Stable Diffusion, they're really breaking into the zeitgeist because there's something that's revolutionary in terms of we've never seen something like this happen before. These kind of areas have historically been the domain of humans, like writing and creating art. And so to see something that is a very human thing being done by a computer is, I think, where so much interest is coming from. But I'm happy for Mike and Dave to chime in on that as well.
Yeah, I guess just to add to that, I was going to say something similar, which is the reason why it's hot now is because it looks like what people expect it to look like. And software development is a similar sort of thing. What works isn't sexy, and what sexy isn't always what works. And so the hardworking, sort of algorithms and models underneath the surface that do this day-to-day stuff, the average person doesn't care because it's invisible to them, right? And part of what is amazing about it is it's invisible to them. So now you see machines doing things that, Star Trek and all this sci-fi, told us would happen. And now, general people are taking an interest, I think. So, the stuff that is doing the heavy lifting, it's exciting to us because, as business people, because it gets results, but it's not necessarily exciting to the general public because it doesn't look like what you've been told artificial intelligence looks like, right? And now it does.
So if you guys are, oh, sorry, Dave.
No, please go ahead. I think those are fantastic answers. Yeah.
So we did have some time at the end reserved for Q&A, but given just the momentum we're having in this on this topic, I thought maybe we could take a question now from Trevor, and his question is: can you discuss how to watch for and deal with AI bias? ChatGPT is liberal leaning bias as it was built in Silicon Valley. So that was part one of his question. The second piece, it would be obviously a different conversation, but AI hallucination. And that seemed to be relevant early on. And there was a story of a New York Times reporter who really got into an interesting conversation. But let's focus on that maybe that AI bias, and is that one of the most relevant negative implications of artificial intelligence? And then what can you do to control it?
Yeah, well, I think that's, it's an interesting question. I would even frame this as kind of, there's pluses and minuses to everything. And like, it feels like we're at a moment where, there is a democratization of AI. You're going to have a tool, especially when GPT-4 comes live and everyone has access to it. You're going to have a tool of like, basically the access of, everybody is going to have access to like the infinite wisdom of LLMs. right? Of like human memory and so forth like this. That's a good thing. But on the other hand, there is the fact that these models are getting so big that, and that they're actually become, there's only a few people that can make them, the ones that are at the cutting edge. So, while everyone can have it in their hand, sure, it's all kind of based on a few decisions that are made here or there, like what goes into it. And, compound that with the fact that in particular, OpenAI is, it's actually, the data is actually proprietary. They haven't exactly told people what it's, they published a 50-page research thing and they didn't actually say what the data is to some extent. So, there is these questions of, what's in the data and so forth like this. And I think that builds kind of this, in a sense, there can be biases built into it that we don't know. I mean, the other model of a fully open source is where I think a lot of people are pushing, and it's getting there. It's just not cutting edge, and it's not ChatGPT, which is what everyone's using right now to some extent.
Yeah, the only thing I would add on to that is here at Amii, we work really hard to take principled AI as a big focus of all the work that we do. And so there's lots of different ways that we work to reduce bias in the models that we work on. So one of the things that we use is data sheets for data sets. So having a good idea of where the data that we're using in the different models, or what our clients are using is coming from, and how it was sourced, how it was brought in, what it's been done to it, who owns it, version control, all these different important factors. Because at the end of the day, when it comes to AI, the old saying is garbage in, garbage out. And so if you're having bad data go in, you're not going to get good results. Also, I think it's, it's important to think too, depending on the type of data we're using, whenever it's data based on humans, it's historical data, and that data often has historical biases built into it in terms of how it was collected, who it was collected on, the processes around it. And so these are things that we need to take into consideration when we're looking at the different types of data that we're using. We also use model cards here at Amii as well to outline what different type, what the model is, what the algorithm is, how it's being used, how it was built, so that when we turn it over to a client, they are able to keep all that up to date, and know what's going into any of the algorithms that we're working on. And then finally, we also use algorithmic impact assessment tool. So there's actually, the government of Canada has a really good algorithmic impact assessment tool that we leverage for all the work that we do with clients as well. So it's super important. Bias is something that, it's inherent to every single one of us, and we kind of accept that humans are biased. But when we are looking at a machine giving us an answer, we want it to not be biased, and that's hard when humans are the ones that are, originally collecting the data that the machine's going to be using.
Yeah, absolutely. I just to sort of add to that, you've got and these guys are the experts on what goes on underneath the hood. But in my world, it's, the math right? Is the tool the right tool? You've got a potential issue where you're just creating spurious results because you didn't use the correct tools and techniques. If that's not the case, then the models aren't biased. It's the data, right? It's, the data has a bias. And part of that is, the political side, right? The sort of left-right thing is, humans are humans and we want our biases confirmed, right? When a lot of times when we're saying we want it to be unbiased, we mean I want my point of view represented, whether it's factually true or not. And the sort of math doesn't lie to a certain degree, but you can make the data say what you want to say by including or excluding whatever you want to include or exclude. But in some cases, that's intentional or unintentional. And obviously that, everything Adam and Dave were talking about has to be accounted for. But I do think the human side of it comes into play, is like, that doesn't tell me what I wanted it to tell me. Might be true, but it doesn't confirm my own bias as well. So we have to be careful when we're evaluating this stuff, that we're not wanting, confirmation bias to be included by, creating a false result, that doesn't, work with the data. It's better to reevaluate the data and or go, what am I really getting from this? Just real quick example on route optimization. When we started doing that, planners and route ops and ops people would go, well, that isn't how I would do it. And they would immediately go, well, the machine's wrong. And you had to actually show them through comparing actuals to estimates, that it was actually doing a better job, but it's not seeing barriers that you're seeing, and it is seeing barriers you're not seeing. It's doing things in a different way, and it's not using human intuition as much. So sometimes you question the result, but then when you realize that it's actually your opinion that's flawed, not necessarily the model, and that is part of it too, I think, is people's just adoption of it and their trust level, right? You shouldn't trust it until, you know, you're confirming with outside evidence that it's actually producing a result that's, you know, factual and correct and accurate.
On the topic of, I'll call it, you know, AI objectivity, do you think it's possible, and thinking about like ChatGPT, I mean, it's scouring the internet, and whatever the popular sentiment is at the moment, that's largely what it's, you know, providing to you with that potential bias of the team of programmers who are building it. You know, we look at bias as a negative potentially inherent with AI, but if we could strip away bias, I mean, that would, and if we refer to politics specifically, I think that would be very, very powerful to be able to filter content through a tool that, you know, for instantaneously fact checking, really looking for objectivity in what's being said, providing information that is factual so people are able to make a more accurate, fully formed opinion. Is that, I guess, is that possible? Is that possible to have a purely objective AI, or will it always have a bias?
My gut would say, especially when it comes to politics, I don't know if there is a correct, you know, a real situation. It's all politics is different people's perspectives on situations. So I don't know if you can ever have a fully unbiased view of it, because I don't know if that exists.
Yeah, and consumption of every piece of data imaginable that could possibly relate in any way to a problem is just not that practical, right? I think you know, there's no human that can do that. None of us can do. To me, it's sort of philosophically and theoretically impossible, never mind what math can do, because the idea of a perfectly, you know, frictionless, transparent economy doesn't exist either. Have I picked the best product for my need? Have I done this? Have I made the best decision? That whole explore exploit thing is very interesting, right? It's like there's a sort of a mathematical determination of like how much exploring new possible data and solutions is you know, accretive to a better solution, and then how much is you know, you've crossed the chasm and you can go no further. And you know, a good example, like in just regular stats, would be something like an election poll, right? I mean, do you poll everyone in the entire country every time you want to ask a question? That's impractical. Are you getting a guaranteed flawless result by polling a sample? No, but there is a number, there's a threshold there where any more data gathering is not going to be accretive to more accurate results. And so I think that's the world you live in. You can't ingest everything every moment all the time. You can't be everyone. No model, no amount of data sets, you know, sort of omniscient and omnipotent. It's just not possible. So based on the limitation of the data available to you, you're always going to be making a decision based on, you know, some assumptions.
I think I agree with what everyone's saying. I think I'm going to play a little bit more of an optimist and say that I think, you know, particularly you go out there and you listen to what people are talking about bias, and there's a lot of people that are really starting to understand each component of a machine learning model, each component, you know, if you break it down, how bias can be injected into this piece, how bias can be injected in this piece, how into each of the pieces of it, you know, along the project. So I think Mike's right. I mean, you'll never have an unbiased thing, but at least we can get smarter. We can try to do better and like understand how we can, you know, bias can be inserted, and that maybe that's the best we can do. Just try, you know, get everyone on your team cognizant of what's going on, you know.
Yeah, and you know, one interesting thing playing around with things like GPT is can it uncover its own mistakes, and can it uncover its own errors? Like finding bias in data is hugely valuable, right? And so it's not a bad thing necessarily if we find it. It's just a bad thing if we ignore it. Really, I mean, finding it should be one of the goals. Is uncovering those things that, because it got in there somehow. right? It ended up in the data set through human introduction of biases as well. So like historically we were talking about things like that, right? Times change. That older data is going to have it in there. Uncovering that and then dealing with it, I think is an interesting topic. It's not a bad thing in and of itself. It's a bad thing if we ignore it.
So we have another question, and this is from Nina, and it's there's been a lot of talk about what kind of jobs will be gone when we digitize work, and what kind of jobs. And her question is, what kind of jobs do you think are going to be disrupted, and what kinds of new jobs will be on the rise? So I think we can all agree that AI is an incredible innovation that enables growth, efficiency, improved productivity, profitability for companies. And managing tasks that we can be replaced by easily. So I look at AI as being very, very positive, and it's an innovation like any others throughout history, where it's just changing the types of jobs that are required. So maybe we can open this question up by let's maybe look at a few of the positives of AI. And Mike, you've mentioned with Routeique specifically with route optimization, but broadly, what are those real world positives that we're going to start seeing in a major way just with the the exponential growth of AI application across industry?
Yeah, I mean, we have a bit of a mantra here. We want to create Iron Man, not Terminator, right? We're not trying to wipe people out. We're trying to augment them. We want to give you the HUD. We want to give you the tools to make you superhuman, and it's actually part of our tagline. So we talk a lot about that. But I mean, I don't know if it's my age or having seen a little bit now and having been through some of these cycles, is that every disruptive technology is going to kill all the jobs, and it never actually happens. I don't think a job is a thing. I don't think it exists. We're treating jobs like they're physical things, like the government has to create them, or a job is the intersection of opportunity and capacity or availability. It exists in the moment, and then it doesn't exist, and they're neither sort of created nor destroyed. It's that sort of abundance versus scarcity mentality. We only have so many jobs. We have to keep them, right? And when we're talking about biases, that's I think where a lot of people's biases come from, is scarcity mentality. It's like, but if we let other people in the country, we won't have enough jobs for us. No, more people means more jobs. Like they're thinking about it that way, I think, is really important. But in terms of what you're talking about with Routeique, we have to be super careful about that exact topic, because especially when you're talking, put my business hat on for a second, you're talking to someone who gets their budget by headcount, right? The person who's buying your platform is going, my budget's dictated by how many people I have on my team. As soon as you go in and go, we could eliminate 20 people from your team, they're like, that eliminates 20 people off my budget. And in reality, I don't think that's actually what happens at all. Again, you free people up to do people tasks, things that people are good at, that they find value in, that they are fulfilled by. Whose day wouldn't be better if you were spent all day doing things that meant something to you, that you felt like you were making a difference? There's certainly lots of tech that's not necessarily AI or machine learning based, that in the day people would complain about, and then now it's like we would never have a human doing that. It's too dangerous. It's toxic. It creates lifelong health issues, those kind of things. But when you tried to put that tech in originally, somebody felt slighted that their job was being destroyed. So I think it's more focusing on, there's some retraining for sure, especially with people with a limited skill set. They may not, that skill set might not exist. It's hard for me to become a farrier or a wagon wheel repairman now. They exist, but not in the same way that they used to. That's a niche now. There's probably a huge trade at some point for an artisan who could repair a wagon wheel or can shoe a horse. And now it's a very specialized thing. That doesn't mean that all those people perished from not having an income anymore. They just adapted over time. So I think, to me, that's an important part of what anyone involved in this space has to treat it like any other disruptive tech. If your mission is to gut businesses and have them on autopilot, you're probably not going to get very far, just because the people that you're trying to sell this to have a vested interest in people. They just have a vested interest in them doing the things that people are best at and leaving the machine work to the machines.
I'll ask a follow-up question. And so Nina had her first question actually was around software development and automation, and I'll just take a theme on that. And it's really two parts. The first is, as you know, the advent or the growth of AI accelerates, the types of roles from a programming or a data science perspective are in greater demand, and it's very difficult for educational institutions to catch up. Some of this can be self-taught, but Dave, obviously, for someone who's gone through, a number of degrees, graduate degrees, postdoctoral fellowships, what, and Adam, with your experience in linking really education, government into the private sector, what can people, I guess, what can people do, if they're worried about, I'm the modern day farrier, transitioning into a stream of technology, but also how to really ensure that educational institutions or learning institutions, I'll call them, that they're up to date on the current, because things are moving so quickly. And how are we making sure that the educational systems, or that people have the right skills, for the in-demand opportunities? What are you guys seeing in the market right now?
Well, I can go first, but I would just say, yes, I do have several degrees, but to be an astrophysicist, I needed a PhD. But to be a data science or machine learning person, I don't necessarily think that you do. I think we're living in a really, again, I'll go back to this, I guess this is my word of the webinar, democratization. I mean, there are so many resources out there that I learn from every day. And, they're not charging for it most of the time. I mean, so I think, there is that kind of feeling like, oh, I should go back and get some kind of, master's in science if I want to be a data scientist or different. And there's tons of programs for that. They can be quite pricey, but, I think, it's really, a lot of companies, in my opinion, value people who are out there who can actually make something and can actually deliver something. And you can show that outside of the academic world, outside of the traditional educational system. And I think it's there to be done. And so it is a disruptive moment we're in right now, especially with, what's going to be turned on, this GPT-4 for everyone. And there's going to be a reshuffling of jobs everywhere and people, in some sense. But I think the resources are there, and I think avoid the hype and just focus on what, incrementally, upskill yourself is how I'm personally taking it, because it's a disruption for myself too, for people in all of our field. I mean, there's a lot to keep in track of if you're trying to always learn the newest thing. Mm-hmm. Focus on the incremental change is my personal perspective. But
yeah, the thing that I would add to that is just around, as we look into the future and AI becoming more and more a piece of every business, of every job, is where a lot of value I see being in the future is at the intersection of the technical and the non-technical, being able to break down silos between those two groups, and be a translator, being able to understand the subject matter expertise of the people you're working with, and then the technical side, and being able to bridge the gap between those two and speak both languages. I think there's going to be a lot of value in those types of positions moving forward, as the technology becomes more and more prevalent. We're going to need more and more of those translators. And then also, like, understanding what tools are available to you. At the end of the day, AI is a tool, and ChatGPT is a tool. Stable Diffusion is a tool. These are all just tools that we're able to leverage. And so understanding what tools are good for, what they're not good for, I think it also, something that we say a lot around here is when you have a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And so right now, everybody has a ChatGPT hammer in their hand and they're trying to hit everything they can with it. There's some things that it's really good for, and there's some things that it's not good for. And so figuring out what tool is right for what job, and then how you can translate between different parts of businesses, I think are going to be some really important skill sets moving forward.
Yeah, like in our shop, I'm the oldest person by a decent amount, probably twice the age of sort of half of our team or more. And I'm probably the most progressive one, exactly what Dave was saying. I'm a sponge. I just like to learn things, and sources, I've taken some of the training that Amii offers. We've taken some more formal stuff, Udemy, Udacity, YouTube, like there's never been more sort of opportunity to ingest and evaluate things and see how they can fit into your tool set. I think it's a mentality thing. Again, if you feel like your job is threatened and you want to hold on to that job, again, if you're the wagon wheel repair guy and you're going, how can I force, legislate them to keep my job open for me, you're thinking the wrong thing. You're thinking, how do I adapt, right? Survival is adaptation. That's how it works. And if you have that mentality, I think you can learn anything, and I think you can adapt. And the other point that I thought, both guys made really well is, we've had this debate with some of the funding bodies where they go, AI is math. And I'm like, it's also linguistics and neuroscience and psychology, but it's also economics. And, everyone has a role to play. You don't have to be a super genius PhD to be involved in this stuff. You can be a consumer of it. You can be an advocate for it. You can be a practice leader or a domain expert. You can evaluate it. You can use the results. Everybody can benefit from it. And it's not just the people at the top of the stack in terms of brilliance. It's, I am definitely not that level, and I'm passionate about it. And I'm learning as I go. So, I think if you surround yourself with the right infrastructure, you can get a lot out of it without having to be that person who's at the forefront of it. Just like everything else, I don't have to know how my car works to drive it. I can still get where I want to go. It helps. If I break down at the side of the road, it helps to have some knowledge, but I'm not going to be able to build one. I'm not going to be able to engineer one, but I can certainly drive one. I think that's a good analogy for how people can, they get involved in it without having to know everything there is to know about it.
I think that's Mike, a really great segue into the work that Routeique is engaged with at Amii. And you had shared that prior to working with Amii, that you were within your own team, had AI and ML initiatives. And a couple of the comments that you've just made, I mean, you're always looking forward, you're very open, you're curious, and always looking for kind of that edge. So maybe if you don't mind giving us a little bit of a background about Routeique, and kind of where you were at and how you got connected to Amii, and then for everyone, the work that you're doing now, and what are some of your desired outcomes?
Yeah, you bet. Yeah. So we're a logistics and supply chain software platform. We have some hardware as well, but predominantly software at heart. And we work with, two of the world's largest companies in food service space, and also a whole bunch of regional and smaller ones. So we wrangle networks, and basically at our core, we move stuff. Stuff is here, it needs to get here, we help you move it. It's obviously a lot more complex than that, but at its core, that's what we do, is get things from where they're made or where they are now to where they need to be used or consumed. And we've been doing that for quite a few years. And, you mentioned the route planning and optimization side. When we started, a lot of the resources, like groups like Amii, they were there, but we weren't unaware. We didn't know what was available to us, and everyone was learning. So we built a lot of this stuff ourselves. And I'm sure now, under the hood, the Amii team would probably go, there's 4,000 better ways to do this. And there probably are, but it works, right? And so I think we're a testament to the fact that, with really a lot of elbow grease and trial and error and self-learning, we were able to build a system that, will optimize 5,000 deliveries in Toronto on Tuesday morning in 15 minutes, only finding out how many trucks and drivers it has 10 minutes before that. So it works very well. It's incredibly accurate. It's pretty high volume. Could it be better? Probably, right? So that started us on our journey to go, well, what else can we do with this data? And our customers are driving us too. They're going, you move things, but there must be more, right? Well, how can we sell more? How can we sell more to our existing customers, to more new customers? How can we improve the customer experience and customer satisfaction rating? How can we, get our ETAs better? And so a lot of the work that we're doing with Amii now isn't like brand new. It's just going, we're doing it over here. Can we also do it over here? Can we use this tool in a novel way? Can we find a novel, use case that we can solve with similar or different techniques? And one of our clients said to me about 5-6 weeks ago, I thought it was probably the best version of this I'd ever heard. He said, I wake up in the morning and I look at my Routeique console, digital control tower, we call it. I think everyone in this industry calls their software their digital control tower. I sit down and I look at it and it goes, do these 10 things and you'll have a great month next month. And my dream is I come in the morning and it's going, I've taken the liberty of doing these 10 things and you're going to have a great month next month. And so, all the work that we're doing, ourselves and with Amii is really in service of this mantra of, decision-making at scale, at a distance with some level of autonomy. And that's what we're trying to do. You could sit, you have your Homer Simpson control tower where you can see your entire country, all your partners, all your stock moving around. We do all that for you. We create this level of visibility. If you had the bandwidth to sit there and look at every single transaction and you had the foresight to be able to sort of optimize all those, you could do it all manually. It's just in reality, it's absolutely impossible. You're talking about massive volumes of data across tens of thousands of transactions, millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars of product flowing through. Without the scale that machine learning provides, it's theoretically totally possible, and in reality, it's completely infeasible because of the level of scale you'd have to have. So we're now taking these tools and techniques that we started developing in-house, and then having the experts who really know what they're doing go, what else can we do with this? So we're working inside the warehouse. We're optimizing the layout of physical space. We're optimizing the flow of goods through the warehouse. So just like trucks in a field, you still have to move your stock around the warehouse. You have to pick and pack and receive and load out and stage and all these things. Very similar problems in a way, but quite different solutions in another way, and entirely different limitations of data. And there's newer data available that you don't have in the field, but there's also data you would have in the field that you don't have here. So when we sat down to sort of start to figure this out, and we became aware of what Amii was doing, we're like, okay, well, this sounds like a fast track to us not having to reinvent 10,000 wheels. And in our first few interactions, we went through their program, their Supply Chain West program, and we're like, okay, this makes a lot of sense, because we suggest something and they have 20 different possible techniques. They can help us evaluate them. They can already eliminate 10 of those and say they're not the right ones. We would have done the same exact thing, but blind, and we would have taken a year to figure it out. And these guys have been there, done that. So I think for us, it's not something new, it's an evolution. But I get a good analogy might be you're a tennis star or something when you're young. Eventually you're going to need a coach that's been to the big leagues if you're going to make the big leagues. And you could learn it yourself. Anybody can play tennis. But if you want to be good, you need to surround yourself with people who are already at that level. And that's pretty much what we're doing now.
I think that's a great analogy. I'll maybe ask Adam a question now. What does the process, Adam, typically look like? And maybe if you can provide the Routeique example on, that initial engagement, what that looks like between Amii and a company like Routeique. And then after that, Dave, would love to hear kind of your perspective and some comments from you on the actual work that you're focused on right now with them.
Yeah, for sure. So I think Routeique is a unique example of how we originally engaged with them. So we actually, like Mike had mentioned, they went through our Supply Chain AI West program, which we were running in collaboration with Scale AI. We've wrapped that program up, so we're not currently running that program right now, but we do have a lot of the same programming available, just in a slightly different package. So how we would typically see a startup come in is initially booking a meeting with myself or someone else on the team, and then we'd often see them go through through our machine learning explorations program. So this is for startups that already have a product in market that's not using AI, but they're looking to see how AI and machine learning can be applied to their business. So over the course of 5 weeks, we'd help them look at their business, see where those opportunities are, evaluate them, transition them into machine learning questions, and then map them out. So we help them go from, I know I need to do AI, but I'm not sure where to start, all the way to, I have a couple really good options that I can look at building a solution around. Then we would see them do some other programming across Amii, where we can scope out a specific use case for them, do a deep dive, and provide a roadmap to them on how we would recommend building it out, which is, I think, a lot of the type of work Mike was explaining about. Here's different solutions. This is why this would be good. This is why this wouldn't be good. We're doing literature review, tech reviews within there. And then from there, they're often going to be going over to Dave's team and going through our advanced technology projects. We're putting talent onto their team and really throwing a lot of human resources and capacity against their problem. So yeah, at that point, I'll turn it back. I'll turn it over to Dave to talk a little bit about how the advanced technology projects work.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think it's actually kind of an exciting time in the project. We're about, I guess, we scoped this project for about a year, and we're 4 to 5 months in. It is, Amii is kind of, Adam was saying, Amii's model is unique and kind of interesting. I mean, it's like we actually find a resource, and then, we hire a person, and that scientist is dedicated to those projects. So for Routeique, it's such a big project, so many moving pieces. There's actually multiple resources, and it's a good situation, because one of the ways you can see many, ML projects fail is without, as people working in a silo, just doing their machine learning by themselves without any domain experience, without any connection to the experts in the domain. So Amii takes the model where we'll bring some people on, we'll put them on that project, and then, we're talking with them, communicating with them every week. We actually want them to kind of feel like, part of the Routeique or part of the other, the people we're working with team. So in our perspective, the reason I'm saying it's an exciting time is because we're, about 4 or 5 months in, as I said, and we're to the point now where the team's really done a good job of setting up kind of the, the initial models of all the different pieces, forecasting, route optimization, different things like this, slotting optimization, sorry, but all those pieces are starting to come together, and they're built in such a way that we can start to run some experiments. And we're starting to talk within maybe the scale of a month or something of doing a sim to real, experiment where we have we can actually predict, a way that a warehouse could be run, more efficiently. And we're actually going to run the experiment. And if nothing else, I mean, we'll get some calibration of how long it takes people to move. But, the best case is that we prove, even at this stage, that already what we're doing is incrementally better. And then we can take the time to really, push on that and find out, how to improve things. So it's a pretty exciting time in the project.
Mm-hmm.
And Mike, just a question for you on the work that the collaboration between Amii right now. What are your desired outcomes? What are you seeing this as achieving for Routeique?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because we can be frustrating to funding bodies and stuff like that, because they like these self-contained projects, and we said at the very beginning we have no interest in doing a project, zero. And I'm sure a lot of the larger companies, some of the ones that have done projects like this, especially in the East, they're looking at it as a project. They have an end goal, and it, at a stopping point, we have a deliverable, and it looks like this. And of course we have that for this project, but our goal has never been to finish the year and have something to show. It's to be a different company at the end. And that's, both guys talked about that, we've got 5 new team members ourselves. We're building our internal capacity. They're learning from the experts on the Amii side. We have a potential, one of the things that I think Adam and Russ probably told me right in day one is we'd love you to sort of have some of those people that are on your project from our side flip to your payroll at the end. I'm like, that's a cool model, right? It's not a consultancy. It's not somebody coming in and going, we're the experts. Don't you worry, your heads about this stuff. We'll take care of all the heavy lifting. You'll just be the client and get the result. They're fundamentally changing, the way we want to do business, and we want that to last forever. So, we come out the other side, and instead of a company that helps you move things, we're a company that incidentally helps you move things while we're monetizing your data in new and interesting ways. And so I think that's the best part about it to me, is that they're not going, we'll take care of all this and give you the result. They're working with us to fundamentally change the way we think. And I mean, even our developers at the beginning, we've hired, 5 brand new people that are just purpose built for this project. We're actually still looking for more on the, the sort of ML engineer and data science side. But our developers initially were going, I don't know, what's this going to do for me, right? And then they start to see what we're actually doing, and all of a sudden they're just like rabid fans and going, how can I be more involved? So I'm hoping that it's really infectious, and even our team our non-tech team is going, what courses does Amii have? What courses are out there for me, right? I'll never learn how to build these things, but I would like to learn to be an educated, user of them, and even going into a client meeting or something and going, I heard your problem. That sounds like this type of problem to me. That some of the things that we've been learning in the Amii courses is to Adam's point, is like, how do I know if this is a hammer problem or a saw problem, right? Like, can I even identify? I might not know how to solve it, but what type of problem is it? And is it solvable? Is it the type of problem that can be solved by these type of techniques, or is it something that needs a fundamental change in the way the business is built or something? So I think, to me, this is the best of both worlds. We're completing the project. We're on schedule. Things are working really well, but we're not going to look the same at the end as when we started, and that was my main goal.
Very exciting. I just we're just about at time. Would like to give Amii a quick plug. So if you're interested in learning more about anything AI and hearing from the leading experts from around Canada and maybe the world, is Upper Bound, a conference in Edmonton on May 23rd to the 26th. I attended last year in person and was blown away by so many of the amazing stories and work being done right here in Alberta. So I encourage people who are attending today to check that out. We will be sharing the LinkedIn profiles of our guests today, as well as the websites of their respective organizations. So please feel free to connect with them on LinkedIn. I want to thank Adam, Dave, and Mike so much for your time today and your insight. I feel like I am better informed and smarter because of it, and ready to resist the uprising of the machines if that ever happens.
Oh, thanks for having me. It's great.
Yeah, it's great. Thank you.
Thanks, Jason.
Great. Thanks so much, guys. Okay, take care. We'll
Bye.
talk to you soon. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.